The Los Angeles Rams appear to be completely done with Matthew Stafford, no matter how crazy that sounds. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the legacy, Louis DiBiase. On today's show, Trey Smith gets the tag from the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the top prospects in the NFL draft, Abdul Carter, deals with some injuries. But we start again with the Matthew Stafford circus. It's crazy. We got NFL reporters fighting over the scoops. It is just a wild time in the Matthew Stafford saga. Before we dive into all of that, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On NFL or the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Louis, I've been talking about how insane it is to me that the Rams would actually get rid of Matthew Stafford, but based on everything we're hearing coming out of the NFL Combine, it seems like the Rams are just completely done.
I just don't get it. I don't know. I mean, the Rams were the closest team to beating the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They had them on the ropes in the divisional round, and I understand that they're thinking about the long term as well, and Matt Stafford wants a payday, which I think is well-deserved, one final one before he retires, but there's got to be some sort of middle ground these two sides can come to. I just think it doesn't make any sense for Stafford to go to a team like the Raiders unless he's that hell-bent on a payday, and for the Rams, I think there is some money they can give up to make this work, and I just don't think going the Aaron Rodgers route or some bridge quarterback really makes that much sense. It just doesn't make sense on either side for what's going down to be the reality.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but you name-dropped the Raiders, and quite honestly, at first, it was all Giants. Everybody thought Giants were the clear fit, and I think the Giants are probably a better fit for Matthew Stafford, but this Raiders steam is picking up, and, where there's smoke, there is fire. And obviously, you don't know what you can trust this time of year in the NFL. It's fair to call it lying season. But the Raiders, I guess, momentum seems to be picking up very quickly. And my guy Q and your boy Q talked about that on Locked On Raiders.
Well, this is where the twist and turn came. Sources. Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matt Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and discussions are ongoing. Several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, with Las Vegas believed to be the most aggressive suitor. That's from Jordan Schultz on Fox. So, of course, when you read that, what are you reading? You're reading tampering. Tom Brady is no longer Tom Brady, the soon-to-be Hall of Famer, the guy that's recently retired, the guy that has 7 rings. Yeah, he's all that, but he's also minority owner of the Raiders. So that there, even though Matt Stafford's agent has been given permission to talk to teams for a potential trade, does not mean that Tom Brady, who is minority owner of the Raiders, can host Matt Stafford at his house and try to convince him and put on the recruiting, full press to try to get him to go to the Raiders. That would be the true definition of tampering. So obviously that caught a big buzz from a lot of different people, and you're starting to see the NFL insiders almost kind of battling with sources and trying to get confirmations.
And not only were they battling with sources, they were literally battling at Starbucks. So, I mean, this has been a point of consternation around the NFL for, 24 to 48 hours now. I do want to say, though, I did see, and I forget the name, and I apologize, but I did see a Raiders reporter say that, the NFL gave them a statement saying the Rams gave Matthew Stafford and his agent permission to talk to other teams. So there is no tampering at play here. But my God, that was my first thought too. How can the owner, and then you see the report come out that, it wasn't intentional. They just both own houses there. And I never.
It's Tom Brady, Tyler. Come on.
Right. I never bought that either, but it does make sense that after the Rams gave Matthew Stafford permission to seek a trade that tampering is kind of out of the window at that point. You're allowing them to tamper.
I also don't care about tampering at all. The NFL literally has a day that has legal tampering. Like, they just need to get rid of this. It's just a silly rule.
But it is negotiation window.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is funny, Tyler, that of all people that are towing the line, of course it is Tom Brady. Like, even after his playing career.
He can't help it.
This man can't help it. Oh, we happen to be at the same resort. The week after Matt Stafford is granted permission to talk to teams, and the Raiders are the team that I think would be most desperate to go get a Matt Stafford because they're stuck in this middle ground purgatory where the last few years they haven't been picking high enough to go get one of these top prospects, but they're not nearly good enough to compete for a championship either. So they're throwing out the Aiden McConnells of the world, and Gardner Minshew. So I get why the Raiders would be all in on this, but unless Matt Stafford only cares about money, I don't get why you'd waste your last few years of your prime playing in Vegas. I don't think they're close to competing.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I think they have a lot of holes on the roster. Now, what I'll say is Pete Carroll has always done a good job of kind of rebuilding things and programs. So him coming in, I think that makes it more likely that they could turn things around pretty quick just because he is a really, really good football coach. One of the better football coaches that I've seen in my lifetime, whether college or NFL. He always seems to have success. So I could maybe buy it a little bit more there. And Stafford at his best is a guy who can raise the level of a team around him. So all those things are true, but I'm with you. That's why at the end of the day, no matter what rumor I hear, I just can't help but think in the back of my mind, oh, this is all a ploy, to get more money with the Rams. I just can't see it happening. But at the end of the day, I think what might have happened here is the Giants come in and say, hey, we're super interested. And then once the Raiders come in and decide we don't want one of these quarterbacks in the draft, plus we want to try to win now, we need to appease Max Crosby, we need to just be better. You know what I mean? I think it could be a case where the Raiders came in and their first offer was better than the Giants' best offer so far. And they're like, we're totally moving away from the Giants and just focusing with the Raiders because clearly they're taking this serious. You know what I mean? So I think that could be what's happened here to kind of shift this tide from, oh, it's the Giants to, oh, it's the Raiders.
I'm surprised that teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Jets aren't more mentioned in this conversation. Like, those are teams that are closer to winning. Even the Giants, I know if they added Matt Stafford, you've got a legit wide receiver one in Malik Neighbors. You've got a good defensive line. Like, you do have real pieces there. And I think Brian Daboll, I think is a better coach than he gets credit for. But I'm surprised there aren't like better teams that are being thrown around. Like, I'm surprised it's teams within the top 10, Tyler. I don't know. I still think eventually, like you said, there's got to be some middle ground where the Rams can sweeten the pot and there's a short-term extension because I don't think they're far away from really competing for a championship. Again, they were the team that had the Eagles on the ropes the most last year. And the NFC Conference, it's still wide open. And the Rams have a young nucleus that's only going to get better on both sides of the ball. So I don't know. I just don't think they should launch themselves into a quarterback-like purgatory that you see Pittsburgh Steelers in right now. I think they got to find a way to get this done.
Yeah, I think it's a little too much. It doesn't make too much sense to me to go from Matthew Stafford to like an Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold or something like that. But there's two things I know for a fact that I agree on you with, that the Rams are the best place for Matthew Stafford, and Tom Brady is a habitual line step.
Just what he does.
With that being said, we got some big news at the NFL Combine over the last 12 hours or so. Abdul Carter, the presumed and possible number one pick in the draft. Some major injury news popped up. Before we get into it, I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss opening tip-off and want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three like Luka Doncic. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. If you are a new FanDuel customer, again, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Matthew Stafford saga and how it's unfolding here, but I do want to get into some NFL Combine news. The NFL Combine drill started on Thursday, and we got some big news on Wednesday night into Thursday morning with an update on Abdul Carter, the presumed number one pick, and I guess one of the possible number one picks in the NFL. And our guys over at Locked On Draft Dudes, which you have to check out, talked about the latest update.
Abdul Carter had his media availability, disclosed he wasn't going to be practicing or doing the workouts because he's still recovering from the shoulder injury that he suffered in the college football playoff. Okay, little bit of a bummer. Expect you to blow the doors off because you're a Penn State athlete, right? And then we found out Tyler Warren wasn't testing either, and it's like, oh man, who's been drinking all the secret sauce that they have in there for their NFL Combine strength and conditioning stuff?
They're going to go back to Penn State and do the thing. Well, not Abdul Carter, but Tyler Warren.
Well, right. And then the news came out last night that not only is Abdul Carter still recovering from the shoulder injury that he suffered in the college football playoff, he also has a stress reaction in his foot, which was unveiled during the medicals. And he has an option to have surgery or not have surgery. If he has surgery, it's about an 8-week recovery timeline, which would have him at this stage maybe medically cleared for like rookie minicamp, depending on like how well the timeline it'd be like might be fringe, but would be fine for like OTAs, would be fine for training camp, no questions asked.
Now, if he performs at his pro day, then I think we kind of put all this to the side. I remember Julio Jones had a foot issue going into the combine, performed well, and it didn't even matter. You know what I mean? I also, looking at the Titans, Derrick Henry had a foot issue recently that he dealt with in the 2021 season, and I think Derrick Henry has been fine since that happened. You know what I mean? So there are other examples. You know, Sammy Watkins' career was kind of altered by a foot issue, you could say. You could make that case. There are other examples of that. Javon Curse, a Tennessee Titans guy. You know, he had a great rookie season, great start to his career, and it was kind of hindered late by a foot issue. So there are examples of these things having a difference, maybe recently, and not so much evidence of it having a difference. But if you were a team picking number one overall or top in the draft, would you have concern about Abdul Carter with the shoulder being a thing coming in and now this foot issue popping up?
I wouldn't. Again, if it was something that was going to keep him out long term, I don't know. It still wouldn't. I mean, Abdul Carter is such a good prospect. It's such a premier position that if you were considering taking him with a first or second overall pick before this, I don't think this news is really going to deter you and say, oh, now we're going to take a quarterback. Like, no, if you were set on taking this kind of position before, Abdul Carter is still the pick. Even if there was, Tyler, some long-term risk, even a little bit. As you mentioned, there are examples of this where it does shorten a player's career. I think it's still worth it to take a chance on this kind of guy. I think the reality is Abdul Carter's an Eagles fan, and he's tanking his stock, so he'll fall to the 32nd overall pick. I think that's the reality. But no, in all seriousness, I don't think this is much of a concern. And like Kyle said, I mean, it's not going to keep him out like into training camp. So if I'm the Titans at number one overall and I'm not taking a quarterback, I'm still taking Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and especially when you do it compared to a quarterback. To me, if you have Abdul Carter and a quarterback close,
yeah,
you should be going with the quarterback anyway.
I was going to say, if you're considering quarterback, it's such a different conversation with that position. It's not one or the other.
100%. It wouldn't make sense to me that if you wanted Abdul Carter over one of the quarterbacks, that now this injury would change your mind on that. Quarterback is such a fragile evaluation that it's like, if I like you that much to have you in that conversation with Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, then I like you're a quarterback. I'm taking you number one. And if I don't, then Abdul Carter getting hurt doesn't make me more confident in the quarterback. It's not like a system. It's not a teeter-totter, where one goes up and the other goes down. It doesn't work like that. So I fully agree with you on that. I also want to mention Abdul Carter never missed a game during college. Literally played in every single possible game that he could play in his 3 years in college. He had a shoulder injury during the college football playoffs that he played through and was nearly dominant most of those games. Like, I just think dropping Abdul Carter in any way on your draft board because he may have to have a boot on for a month, or even if he has the surgery, he would be out 2 months of his rookie offseason. I just don't buy that as a significant enough reason to drop him significantly down the board. I remember, again, not to bring up so many Titans examples, but I guess Titans have had a lot of examples here. Jeffrey Simmons went 19 because of a torn ACL, and there was an off-field issue for sure from high school, but the ACL was the bigger factor in the drop-in. Jeffrey Simmons turned out all right. Now, there are a lot of examples of injury things not working out necessarily, but when the tape says top 5 player and the injury isn't long-term chronic, I don't think that you can allow it to drop a guy significantly.
No, again, like you said, if you think this is going to shorten his career where he plays under 10 years, if he can't even make it through a decade in the NFL, that's something to actually consider if he won't get through more than one contract. But even if Tyler, he was going to miss time seeping into the rookie year, I would still take Abdul Carter with a top 5, top 10 pick. So unless it has to do with his long-term career, I don't really think this injury should impact your evaluation at all. Maybe if you're wondering if you're going to you're the Titans and you're really close between deciding to trade down or Abdul Carter, this could impact it. But
I agree.
Unless it was extreme news, no, I just think he is such a perfect prospect that, and like you said, he was durable in college, that this wouldn't change my board at all.
Yeah, 100%. And then again, the testing in March will be important though, because you'll need to see he decided not to have surgery. He's going to let it heal and rest. They're calling it a stress reaction, not a stress fracture. So I don't really, I always say on my show, I'm not a doctor. I don't know the difference. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to pretend like I can figure out the difference. I'm not a medical professional at all, but I want to see that testing. And if he looks fine in March, I have a hard time turning it into a big deal. Here's one thing I will say, though, before we move on. NFL general managers, look at me right now. Look at me. Do not let the Philadelphia Eagles get Abdul Carter. I don't care what's happening. Don't do it.
It's not happening. Trust me.
He can't keep getting away with it. You can't do it. That's all that matters to me.
I mean, I think Abdul Carter would love it, but I think this year, this is not like the Jalen Carter season. I think this one's virtually impossible. As much as I think Howie Roseman can turn water into wine, I think this one's too steep even for him.
Well, Howie Roseman won't have to wait long, because if you listen to certain fans online, Abdul Carter is going to get through his rookie contract, decline in an extension.
Him and Michael Parsons, they're all coming to Philadelphia.
Right. Everybody, you know what I mean? You play at Penn State, you're playing for the Eagles. There's no way around it. But all jokes aside, we did get a big transaction in the NFL, or big news on a transaction in the NFL on Thursday as well. A guy who previously was thought not to get the franchise tag did get one in Trey Smith in Kansas City. All right, Louis, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Thanks for making Locked On NFL your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft. You got Damian Parsons. You got Keith Sanchez. They're doing a great job breaking down everything you need to know about the NFL Draft. They've been talking about Abdul Carter and the quarterbacks, and they go in deep dives into the late round guys. Like, you're not going to get better draft coverage than you are Locked On NFL Draft and Locked On NFL Draft dudes. I mean, what else do you need? We got you covered, folks. But with that being said, Trey Smith, guard from the Kansas City Chiefs, gets the franchise tag. It seemed like he might not get the franchise tag, but we got the reports early that it wasn't expected he would get the tag, but ultimately Kansas City makes the move. I think with the pass protection that the Kansas City Chiefs had in the Super Bowl, it would be a hard bargain to lose one of the best guards in the NFL from an offensive line that was already struggling, especially at tackle. So you keep that interior intact now by doing this. I think it makes sense for Kansas City to not let a great player leave for nothing.
Yeah, especially at a position, like you said, that just got exposed in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. And it's similar to what happened in the 2020 Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. They have to attack this problem quickly, or it's going to really hold the Chiefs back from competing for more championships. So, yeah, I mean, the tackle position is the bigger problem than the interior, but I don't think you want to lose players at the biggest weak spot of your roster. Now they have to, you've got that spot locked up. They've got to find a way to bring in as quickly. I'll give the Chiefs credit. After 2020, they did a good job of quickly reshaping that offensive line, which is not easy to do in the NFL. They got to try to pull that off again. The tackle spots now are the biggest priority.
Yeah, 100%. And they went out and made a big trade. If I remember correctly, they got Orlando Brown Jr. Before he went to Cincinnati. And I think that could be a move they need to make. Now, Laramie Tunsil, there's some whispers that Laramie Tunsil might be available. Houston might be trying to work around a little bit of money, and their offensive line wasn't very good last year, even with Laramie Tunsil. So why pay so much for it to not produce? I think that Tunsil's still a very good player if he's maybe not in his prime anymore, and that could maybe make some sense for Kansas City. But here's one thing to consider. Just because Trey Smith got the tag doesn't mean that Trey Smith is going to stay with Kansas City. And I want to go back to a clip from Locked On Chiefs from a week ago or so when it was reported that he wouldn't get the tag. And our guys at Locked On Chiefs talked about if he did get the tag, what that might mean.
So you're looking at $25 million as a tag number for Trey Smith. Can you do it? Yes. But remember, if you do that, you have to have that money free as of when you tag them. And that would mean that they're going to have to free up $25 million in cap space. And that's going to be something that they're going to have to do. That's going to be a significant move. And they can get that from Mahomes by himself. So it's not that they can't do it, but it would be significant. They could tag him. They could transition tag him, which would be, sorry, I'm looking at the numbers. I apologize. Just under 23 million. So not much difference between a transition tag and a franchise tag. And that's just the normal franchise tag. That's not even looking at exclusive rights, which I don't think that they would do, which would be even more expensive. So those are kind of the numbers that you're looking at. I would not be shocked if they franchise tag Trey Smith. I do think that could be something that would get him moved. But I also will say that I don't think that there's any way that they plan on him playing under a franchise tag. So if they franchise him, he is getting traded. And I can't believe that if they franchise him, they think that they can get a deal done with him long term.
I mean, that's pretty. Chris is pretty solid about that. Like, if they tag him, they're going to trade him. And all the reporting around his tag right now kind of implies that they're keeping him and they want to work out a long-term deal and all that. But I think Chris is on to something there. That's a lot of money to pay a guard because offensive line isn't by guard or tackle. So you're basically paying offensive tackle money to a guard. And Trey Smith was going to get top of the market money, but the most money a guard has ever gotten is Landon Dickerson, $21 million. The tag is $24 million when the salary cap came in at $279 on Thursday. So I don't think that it's tenable to leave him on the franchise tag. So maybe there's a trade coming, but who's going to trade to pay that much money to a guard? You know what I mean? And there are some pass protection issues with Trey Smith that some people buy into and are kind of pushing. Brandon Thorne, who is one of the best offensive line minds, he tweeted out basically the Latin version of buyer's remorse with Trey Smith. So it does make you wonder, what's actually going on here.
Hopefully they do have a plan B, though, or they try to get something done for a long-term deal because, again, they need to add offensive linemen. They can't lose anymore. And although I think like adding more weapons, being more explosive vertically, like that needs to be a focus for the Chiefs. Like they have to get faster. They have to get younger when it comes to pass catchers. Last year they're throwing out DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce and Hollywood Brown. The offensive line, though, is the priority. Like them, the biggest reason they've gotten blown out in 2 of their Super Bowl losses is because Patrick Mahomes was not protected. They've won championships without those star pass catchers outside of Travis Kelce. That's a priority this offseason, but not over the offensive line. So if they do trade Smith, they better have a solid plan B, or if they're going to keep him on the tag, they got to figure out a long-term contract because they got exposed in New Orleans last month. So that's something that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. And look at their cap sheet, man. $27 million cap hit for Juwan Taylor, $26 million for Joe Thuney.
Talk about buyer's remorse.
$24 million for Trey Smith. I mean, quick math there. That's like $90 million, a little under $90 million for 3 offensive linemen, and your offensive line isn't good. Their 6th biggest cap hit is Creed Humphrey at $10 million. So that's $100 million in 5 offensive linemen, and your offensive line isn't very good. You cannot operate that way. And Creed Humphrey is going to need a big-time extension, here in a year, where they're going to have to probably make him the highest-paid center of all time. So I guess maybe what Chris said, he's right on, because looking at that, there's no way that they can keep him on the tag. And even if they get a long-term deal done, that's still tough to deal with. They're going to have to move off Thuney or move off Taylor or something like that quickly.
I would bet significant money that one of the first 2 picks the Chiefs have, and likely the 31st overall pick, is going to be on an offensive lineman. Because like you said, look at all the money that's invested in this position, and they're kind of buyer's remorse with a few of those guys. They have to, and this is just life of being a consistent contender in the NFL, you have to bring in cost-controlled talent, like 4-year rookie deals, 5 years of team control. You've got to hit on those draft picks, and I think the Chiefs have tried to go about it in different ways in the offensive line, whereas like the Eagles have brought all these guys up through homegrown like draft picks, and I think the Chiefs got to probably take that route this offseason, because that's an expensive front.
Yeah, you're not lying about that. But let me just say this. If they release Joe Thuney between now and March the 14th, it would save them $16 million in cap space, and he'd only have a dead cap hit of $10 million because it's the last year of his contract. So that's a possibility for them as well. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, my co-host, the Legacy Louis DiBiase. As we tell you every single episode, stay safe out there.